And we are back on Texas football. Another hour.
Hey,
How are we
CJ,
doing?
what's up, man? You guys ready? Happy New Year.
What's
Happy
up,
New Year.
fellas?
That's right.
What's up, Robbie?
What's up, D?
Hey, man. Happy New Year to you. And we're ready to roll. We're inside 5 hours to kickoff now. 7:45, about 20 blocks that away south here. And Longhorns and obviously the Washington Huskies. We're watching the bowl games right now here at Manning's. Pretty decent games. How about Wisconsin LSU 31-28? It's a good ball game right now. A lot of people interested in that in this area, obviously. CJ, you guys been at this all day. What's the vibe? What's the feel right now?
Man, it's fun. I love being out here. I mean, Manning's has been great. We've got an awesome turnout out here. A lot of fun, getting to shake some hands, meet some new people. So this has been a lot of fun. A lot of orange in the city. I'm sure you've noticed as well. A lot of burnt orange here in New Orleans. I love it, Rod. I'm sure that's something that, going back to the bowl games and stuff like that, you love walking around and seeing, the burnt orange as well. So this has been awesome.
Yeah, it reminded me of I've had some of those, the Cotton Bowl I played in a couple of times, and then Longhorn Nation obviously can take over Dallas because that's home territory for them. But it's interesting, man, that the last few games for Texas, I'm not saying they're a team of destiny, but I hope they're a team of destiny. They've been able to play at home. Big 12 title game was basically a home game. This, compared to what Washington has to deal with, essentially it's a home game because they got to come to the South from the Pacific Northwest. And if you make it to H-Town, I mean, you're talking about one of the Longhorn meccas in H-Town. So it would be amazing to end the run of the end of the season all with basically home games, essentially.
Yeah. As CJ said, Rod, it's probably 70-30 burnt orange here in the Crescent City, the Big Easy. It's a good contingent of Washington Huskies fans here. Plenty of blue. They say "Go Dogs" a lot. I learned that last year at the Alamo Bowl.
Yep.
I didn't know that. I didn't know the Huskies chant was "Go Dogs," but it makes sense. So they've got a pretty good support staff, but it'll be mostly burnt orange. And obviously Manning's. This is a Texas One Fund event, wristbanded event. I think they have an open bar starting at 2 o'clock. CJ, I didn't know if you knew that. You get one of those wristbands after last night. But no, this is where everybody's going to get hyped and a long tailgate party to head down to the Superdome. As we are now, as we said, inside 5 hours of this game. Rod, how are you feeling about this matchup? I know we've been back and forth on it for the last month, three weeks to a month. Any changes to your mindset as the deep dive that you've done and the film watching you've done? Where's your mind on this game right now?
Yeah, maybe too much analysis, right? We've had so much time to dive into both of these teams, the strengths, weaknesses, the matchup between the two, all the different storylines, the X factors, all the tendency breakers. I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think, Washington's a team that's been clutch all year long. Penix in his career, 5 game-winning drives. This is a guy that's been able to win games in clutch time by making critical plays in those moments. Texas this season in the fourth quarter, they've been clutch, whether it's a game-winning goal line stand, whether it's a game-winning defensive play, or whether it's an A.D. Mitchell catch to seal it, or whether it's going on the road versus Alabama in Tuscaloosa. This team has been clutch. So you got 2 clutch squads. I think it's going to come down to the fourth quarter. Even the one game Texas lost, right? What did it come down to? Fourth quarter, and Texas on the game-winning drive defensively couldn't stand up. I think it's going to be the same way, man. I think it's coming down to that play, and hopefully Texas on the winning side of it.
I'm right there with you. It certainly feels like there's almost been an overanalyzation of this game coming into it. But hold on. I was going to say that's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. Come out and provide some, analysis and almost too much. But we want to cover every bit of it. And Rod, I'm right there with you. I'm ready for this game to kick off. I still think Texas has that edge because of the interior pressure that they're able to generate with Sweat, Murphy, Collins. Everything about that Texas front seven screams advantage. The secondary obviously been a little bit of a question mark and will be where Washington attacks. And Aaron, you mentioned the Alamo Bowl last year. That was a great game plan. Washington did not have the success that they thought they would have had coming into that game. So I'm very confident in Texas coming into this game with a great game plan and having that front seven be the game changer for them.
Yeah. Rod, you talked about that you liked the game plan Pete Kwiatkowski installed last year. and they did not give up the deep ball. They did a nice job preventing big plays, but where they were leaky was on the money downs, 3rd and 4th down. A lot of conversions for Washington, kept drives alive, kept Texas's defense on the field a long time. And we've heard Kalen DeBoer talk about that here in New Orleans. They want to try to wear down this front. They want to try to make them move and maybe move the pocket to kind of wear down Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. They know what they're dealing with there, but they're going to have a game plan to try to deal with it. And then the other part of that, Rod, is when Murphy and Sweat go out, which they do, a few drives a half, that's when I think you're going to see Michael Penix and this team attack the Longhorns, knowing that those two guys are not on the field, for that particular drive. Maybe even go to some tempo, which they don't do a lot.
We talked about, you got to win to break tendency. That's something that every coach has got to do. Sark does it really well, but especially in big games, right? To win these big games, you got to break tendency at the right time. We've talked about it all morning long. I do expect Washington to throw in some tempo. And CJ mentioned they don't always have to necessarily run the tempo. It's the same style of Oklahoma. They can run it differently as long as they keep that same personnel from Texas in the game, which is what they're trying to do, and then matchup hunt and find advantageous matchups. That's the whole point. I think another way that, you can see them break tendency, Michael Penix, I had them talking about it on a podcast earlier. Hell, I'm doing deep diving too. I'm trying to figure out every little advantage I can. Michael Penix has run a little bit more lately. In some of those games. Not saying they're going to throw it in as a staple of the offense like Oklahoma did with Dylan Gabriel, but it's one of the few ways to catch Texas off guard with the quarterback run game, maybe some quarterback draws. I wouldn't doubt if you saw it every now and then just to throw off Texas if they're going to give Michael Penix green grass and not account for him and as a +1 in the running game. I wouldn't doubt if you see it. It's one of the few ways you can attack Texas. So I think Washington, they understand the game plan from last year and how it was effective in limiting their vertical passing game. They came in last year, made great adjustments with the run game, with the short passing game, 16 of 18 for Michael Penix in passes 0 to 9 yards in that Alamo Bowl. I think in this game, they will kind of build their offensive game plan off of last year's failure and also off of last year's shortcomings. And I think they'll solve those problems. If PK wants to start with that game plan, which I think he will, he may have to be ready to pivot very quickly, potentially.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And, this is what you're dealing with, right? There are 3 really good receivers, an NFL quarterback, and Michael Penix, who's been in this system his whole career. It's kind of a Dylan Gabriel feel, CJ. CJ was Dylan Gabriel's in the same system at Central Florida. Then, Jeff Levy gets hired, so he comes there. This is Michael Penix. Was in Indiana for several years with Kalen DeBoer as the offensive coordinator. He gets the Washington job and brings him with him. So there's not a defensive scheme he hasn't seen. This is why he doesn't get sacked very often, right? We talked about the number of sacks he's taken in his career, under 20 the last 2 years combined. This offensive line's the Joe Moore Award winners, but they have a quarterback who knows what to do and is decisive with the football.
And I think that comparison to Oklahoma is pretty close. I think it's something that you see very often with experienced quarterbacks in the system for quite a while. This is a real strength, and it's something that is worth noting. Like you said, there's not been a defensive look that he's not seen in this system. He's going to be able to sit back, understand where pressure will be coming from, look at coverages, alignment, everything along the lines of that, and be able to counter as a result of being in this system for so long. I think Oklahoma is actually a very similar style of play to Washington, aside from the tempo. They stretch the field vertically often. They like to take shots. The intermediate passing game is there as well. Veteran quarterback, good offensive system that he's in as well. Where can Texas start to pick apart that defense? It's in the secondary, and that's similar to Oklahoma. If Texas protects the football, and I think that's really the biggest key of this game, protecting the football and creating turnovers, it's going to be a little bit of a different game on the scoreboard than what we saw against Oklahoma this year.
All right, here's a super chat from Justin. Appreciate him. It's a game day. Fellas, Rod, CJ, does the more physical team win today? And who will be the most physical player on the Texas side today? My pick is Anthony Hill. Any thoughts on physicality? Rod, you've been in bowl games where you take a month off. Right? You got to get back to that physicality. Sark's talked about trying to have some physical practices, but you don't want anybody getting hurt ahead of this game, especially important players. How quickly can you find that level of intensity it's going to take to win this football game?
Yes, certainly, Justin. Thanks for the super chat. Happy New Year to you as well. Certainly, Texas should have the advantage in terms of physicality because that starts in the trenches, right? Physicality, you think about that, usually it translates to line play, trench play. Texas has the better defensive line overall in terms of the depth. Texas offensive line depth, even though I know Washington, they won the Joe Moore Award for the best offensive line in the country. You could make a case that Texas had a better O-line. You really could. I'm just throwing it out there. You can make the case stats-wise that Texas O-line was just as good, if not better. And I think Texas has more talent, upside talent, than the Washington, like depth of its O-line, not just the starters, because keep in mind, their starting center actually was out for the season. Brailsford is the guy they put in, and he was the starting right guard as a redshirt freshman. They switched him over. So, they actually a little bit more. They can't sustain any more injuries on the O-line. Texas, we saw them being able to deal with injuries on the O-line because of the depth of it. So I think Texas has the advantage in the trenches is my point. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if I'm Washington, I'm Kalen DeBoer, and I'm thinking Texas has the advantage in the trenches. I'm not sure we can go man for man with them in the trenches and end up, being the team that comes out on top over 4 quarters of football. I think they may try to turn this into a perimeter-oriented game. They could try to take the advantages to the outside, and you could go with short, quick passes as kind of your extensions of the running game, wide receiver screens, try to get Dylan Johnson on the edges, just stay away from the strength of Texas. And even when you're talking about, on the offensive side for Texas and going up against the Washington defense, I think they're going to try to win on third down. Like that's their money down. That's where they're great at, trying to get Texas in third and long. If you're Texas, you want to stay out of that situation altogether. So that's where the chess match, I think, is going to come in for both of these squads. Texas clearly has the advantage the closer you get to the ball, lines of scrimmage. But you could argue that Washington has a better advantage on the outside, on the perimeter, when it comes to the wide receivers versus Texas DBs. I know they obviously have an advantage. You could say their wide receivers versus Texas DBs, but Texas wide receivers versus their DBs. That's an advantage for Texas. But I think they have the advantage on the outside. Texas has the advantage in the inside. I think they'll try to exacerbate that.
Well, it's getting rowdy here, CJ. We still got 4.5 hours to kick off, and they're getting fired up here at Manning's, which is fun.
Should be.
Texas chance and Texas. I was at the parade yesterday. Man, Longhorn fans were out in force at that bad boy. The Sugar Bowl parade. This is the 90th Sugar Bowl. The city knows how to put on a party. They know how to do these things right. I will say it's been interesting, CJ and Rod, that Sark, having been here now since a couple days, see Sarkisian, even at his final coach's press conference, which was yesterday morning, CJ, his redemption story, his introspection on this year and what it's meant from where he was, leaving the USC job to now, it's not lost on him. And I think that's something that can resonate with this team. The opportunity is here. I know you're a Texas Rangers fan, CJ, and I know I have a lot of Longhorn fans who are here at Manning's. They're thinking, man, we're going to be good for a long time. We got these recruiting classes pumping in. We're hitting the portal. We got NIL rolling with the Texas One Fund. But the opportunity's here. It's what I told my Ranger friends when they were making their run through the playoffs. These are hard to win. These are hard. You don't get these opportunities very often. The Longhorns haven't been here since 2009. Sark was trying to impress that on his team. You guys, you just never know. And for this team that's got a lot of special super seniors and experienced leaders, Sark talked about 30 or 40 real leaders like that step up on this team. That chemistry is hard to find. As a Rangers fan, you understand that locker room was cohesive as it gets. They would never say die and find ways to win all those road wins. This is that opportunity for this team to win a national championship. Because if you can win this game, you get down to Houston, as Rod said, in front of a partisan crowd. This is a huge opportunity. I hope this team takes that mantra that Sark's been talking about this week.
No, you're absolutely right. And above anything else, I think the main takeaway from that is you're in a position to win a national championship this year.
Yeah.
Whether you are on pace, on schedule, ahead of schedule in many instances, the opportunity is here. And you are now in a position to etch your name into Texas football history forever. You've already done it with the conference championship. There's going to be a 2023 inside DKR come next fall. You can also add a bigger banner and a bigger billboard with a much larger welcome home party if you take care of business tonight and next Monday night in Houston. That is the opportunity at stake for Texas right now. And like you said, it's a lot of the team coming together. We've talked about culture. I don't want to beat the culture narrative into the ground again because, Rod, we just talked about that for 30, 45 minutes previously today. But that's what it is. And you start talking about the recruiting and how it's almost an effortless attraction that Steve Sarkisian and his staff have right now going for them in regards to Texas football. So the opportunity is there, whether you thought coming into the season it was going to be, an opportunity or not. Well, we're sitting here in New Orleans about 6 hours from game time. So a lot of excitement. And, I love the phrase, seize the moment.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Texas has the opportunity to do tonight, to really, kind of put themselves right back into that consistent national picture heading into the SEC. What's better than that?
Yeah, I think that is the opportunity, Rod, to do something special. You've had a month now to get healthy and really install a great game plan. You've been in these moments in your career, Rod. It's about execution. You got to go out and control the emotion, control the opportunity that you have. Try to pick up where you left off with the Texas Tech and the Oklahoma State games, and really hit the ground running in this game because the opportunity is there. I know it's all any athlete ever wants, right? They want that opportunity to play for a championship. Not everybody gets to. You almost did in your career at Texas, Rod, when you guys had that Big 12 championship opportunity, and we know how it ended. And I don't want to bring up sour times, but that's what every athlete wants, is this opportunity. To be interesting to see how the Longhorns responded to to what we're saying right now this evening at the Superdome.
Yeah, this team has they basically made believers. A lot of Longhorn fans out of the nation, that they are one of the best teams in the country, and they got a chance to win it all. And I honestly think they believed it the entire time, and they knew that after that Bama game, I think a lot of other Longhorn fans started to believe this team had what it took to be, a championship contender. We hadn't seen them put together a complete game. That was the last challenge for them. They were playing to their competition, not playing to a standard. Last two games of the season, we saw them actually play to a standard. Versus Tech, they played to a standard. Versus Oklahoma State in the Big 12 title game, they played to a standard. They didn't allow the subpar competition and the subpar play of Texas Tech and Oklahoma State to determine, how well they played and how they executed. That didn't happen early on in the season, right? That was the last area of growth for this team, truly, in my opinion, to make me believe they can win it all. Right, that was the last area of growth. We had seen this team become a clutch team. We had seen them been able to choke out opponents on the road, Tuscaloosa. All right, we had seen them be the most physical team on the field versus a team like Alabama. We had seen Quinn perform in clutch time. There are a lot of questions that were answered, and the last one for me was, could this team just perform and play to a standard and do that consistently? We hadn't seen it last two games of the season. I think that we saw it. And fortunately enough for Texas fans, that means they're ascending, right? This team is peaking at the right time. I'm not saying Washington's not a great team. They're awesome, but I don't know if you could say Washington's peaking like Texas is, considering the last two games they played. Now, could that be an outlier and an aberration? It could be. Could it be the competition of Oklahoma State and Texas Tech? It could be. But like I said, early in the season, we saw Texas against U of H. We saw Texas against Wyoming, all right, for 3 damn quarters, play a ball game that went back and forth and was a tied for most of the game, and then them blow them out in the fourth quarter. We saw them play a competitive half versus Rice. We saw this team play TCU. Look how that game ended. We saw this team play to their competition a lot. Those teams are good teams, but they're not on the level of Texas. We know that. But then finally, last two games, they started playing to a standard. And if they play like that, that's what was capable of beating Bama. But their inconsistency is what almost lost them a game versus U of H and TCU down the stretch. But I think now seeing what they're capable of and now them performing consistently there, if they play that way, I don't know if Washington will play their best game or play to a standard. And even Washington standard, I love this team. I think they're a great team. I really do. I love Kenny DuBois. I think he's a hell of a coach. But I don't think their standard is as good as the standard of Texas because they just don't have the talent. Guys, if Washington wins the national title, they'll be the first team, all right, since the modern recruiting, which is the last 23 years or so to win the national title without a 5-star on the roster.
Yeah.
Like that just doesn't happen. All right. You don't have a roster. They don't meet the blue chip ratio. That means 50% of their roster aren't even 4- and 5-star recruits. Every other team in here meets the blue chip ratio. At least 50% or higher. They do not. So if they play to their standard, their standard will be really good. But I think Texas standard is even higher, and given the way it could all lay out.
Yeah. No, it's well said, Rod. And, the reason I compared it and parallel it to the Texas Rangers, you're a fan of that ball club. You had to ride the roller coaster of the season, right? There were ups, there were downs, there were injuries. But when they got into the playoffs is when they really peaked. And as Rod's talking about, to get to this moment, the Longhorns had to, navigate some waters, right? A quarterback injury, key injuries to your starting running back who was on his way to a Doak Walker Award, and some lulls in some games. And as Rod said, they had to learn to play their brand of football, not to the level of the competition. That's been a season-long challenge and growing process for this team. But it's what Sark talked about again yesterday, is this team has poured into each other, into one another, much like the Rangers did to win a World Series. Because once they got going, no one can stop them. And I think that's kind of the feel that Rod's talking about. That can you build on the Big 12 championship game, and all these guys that are never going to play in the SEC, they're done. This is their last couple of games to do something special. I think is the opportunity, and that's what a season's about. You learn a lot about yourself, and the fact that you're able to overcome those things, have the one loss, but still put yourself in this position, you have a chance to do something special.
Yeah, one last point on the Rangers, and I know some of our Houston fans are probably
Houston fan.
Come on, man.
I know some of these guys at home are sitting back thinking, we got to hear about this, but hey, we finally had our fun. So I'm gonna make one more, point to what you brought up. Peaking at the right time.
Yep.
Peaking in the postseason. Peaking at the right part of the schedule. Because it's one thing if you beat Alabama week 2, and then you fizzle off as a 9-3 team. We saw Oklahoma kind of do that this year. They beat Texas. They're moving into 6-0, and then they dropped 2 in a row. Luckily, Texas didn't do that, and we're now here watching Texas play tonight. Texas is coming off the 2 most complete football games that they played the entire season. The massive blowout whooping of Texas Tech right after Thanksgiving at home, and obviously the drumming in Cowboy Stadium against Oklahoma State to win the Big 12 title. Those 2 games were far and away the best, most complete games of football Texas has played all year. So while it's impressive, Texas has won 12 games right now. The 2 last games that they've played was the best they've played all year. And that momentum, if they're able to carry that into this playoff, I don't think there's a team that can beat them. Texas has already proven they can beat Alabama. Right now, the way they're playing the last 2 weeks of the season, there is not a team that will beat Texas in this playoff if they continue that level of play. And obviously, a month off, as we've mentioned.
Yep. Well, and that as Rod's point, I mean, this isn't the most talented Washington roster 1 to 85. I mean, they're really good at the top with their quarterback, who's the best quarterback the Longhorns have played this year. The receivers, Rod, are as good a group as they've seen all year. Offensive line's a Joe Moore award-winning line, and then the running game, which Texas has stopped for everybody. Even Dylan Johnson's had a huge game against Oregon when they needed him most. So Washington argued the same thing, that they're finding their groove. At the same time, I do think Texas is peaking. And if you want to finish off the baseball parallel, Rod, once the Rangers got past Houston, they got over that Houston hump. The Arizona Diamondbacks were like chum in the water. You kind of feel like if the Horns can get through Washington, get that final revenge game where they avenged all the losses of last year, this is that last opportunity. They can win this one, get down to Houston. Boy, that's going to be a tough team to face in NRG Stadium, I promise you.
Yeah, because, even though Texas is a better team on paper, and I repeat, on paper, but these games are not played on paper. They play on the field. There are a lot of different factors that we just can't quantify during the pregame analysis. But on paper, Texas is a better team overall. We just talked about the talent advantage. But Texas overall, I think, just in terms of strengths, on each level of the defense, the strength overall with the offense, they're better, in my opinion, as a football theorist. But the Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Serena Williams size, Cardi B size, Megan Thee Stallion size, but is they got a better quarterback. They got a better head coach. I know y'all love Sark. I love Sark too, but I'm just going off the record of the head coach. And he won Coach of the Year. He's a better head coach right now. And their strength, which they are the best at in the country, is specifically targeted at your biggest weakness, which is your pass defense. And they got 3 NFL wide receivers to weaponize behind the arguably the best quarterback, in the country, if you want to make that argument, but second best player in the country, second best quarterback in the country based on the Heisman odds. So those 3 checks advantages they do have overall, I think Texas has more advantages. They could implode your entire blueprint. It's like when we watched the 49ers and the Ravens, right? 49ers, better team, obviously better roster. No question. Check those boxes. And they were playing at home. Texas, this home field advantage. So, hell, Texas 49ers definitely going to win. Nope. Lamar Jackson was a better quarterback. John Harbaugh, better head coach, so they had a better game plan. And their strength, Lamar Jackson's ability to keep plays alive and extend plays, specifically targeted at the weakness of the 49ers, that when their pass rush can't get home, he can exploit those DBs outside. That's how football works. That's how football goes. All right, how you Rangers fans, that's how football go, and it could go that way because that's how they have those advantages, and those are arguably the most key advantages in all of football.
Rod, I wanted to get your thoughts on this real quick because I don't necessarily disagree on your Kalen DeBoer, Steve Sarkisian take. He's done it. DeBoer has been, a proven winner where he's been previously to Washington. But I do want to bring up, why has Washington not been able to, I don't want to say blow out bad teams, but they've played a lot of close games in conference. Mm-hmm. Why has that separation not necessarily been there on the scoreboard? Whereas, there's been some games where Texas has been able to really stretch away and pull away late in games. I want to go through the conference margins of victory for Washington. Aside from California, which was the first conference game for the Pac-12 this year, they won by 27. After that, it's 7-3-8, didn't score a touchdown. 9-10 against USC, still allowed 42. 7-2-3-3. Why has that been kind of a continual occurrence for Washington this year for a team, like we said, is very good, very talented. They're 13-0 for a reason, but for whatever reason, they're still, we talk about it all the time, playing down the competition. Is that a coaching thing? Is that a talent thing? What is something that you think is a reason for that?
I think it's a talent thing. I think it's that simple. I mean, they got 49 3-stars on their roster. Hell, Texas got 47 4-stars. Michigan's got 45 of them. Bama's got 56 of them. Guys, over a while, talent. I mean, it's talent, guys. I just tell you, if they win a national title, it'll be the first team in modern recruiting to win a national title without a 5-star player on the roster. There's only so much you can do with development, with schematic advantage, with coaching, guys. After a while, you do when you get this late in the season against these teams, so you do need that advantage. So I think ultimately why they haven't dominated teams, I think they can win. They find ways to win because they got a good coach, they got a good quarterback, I think they got a good culture. And the NFL wide receivers they have, it gives them a unique advantage. They can always rely on, hey, man, by the way, they've won games even without necessarily being able to score. But I think that's why they don't pull away. Texas can pull away because Texas can lean on you with their talent advantage. After a while, if you ain't in it because you made some plays early or Texas their own worst enemy in the red zone or turnovers, dude, you got no shot. Oklahoma State showed you that. It's like, dude, we got boat raced. They just won their bowl game, got to double-digit game, got boat raced because Texas playing good football all around. And, dude, it's just when you got that much of a talent advantage, but do they have that much of a talent advantage over Oklahoma? No, they don't. You know what I mean? Like so I think talent is a big part of it for the most part. That's my biggest reason.
Well, that goes back to your point here as we started the 2:00 hour, Rod, was, they have high football character, right? They've won 20 in a row. It's not just 13-0. They've won 20 straight football games dating back to last year, including last year's Alamo Bowl. So despite what you're talking about, which is on point, they have a quarterback who finds ways to win games. They have a coach who helps them find ways to win games. They're opportunistic. And that's something that we've seen the Longhorns develop this year, too. It was a point of emphasis after last year's Alamo Bowl. The 5 losses last year were, as Sark would say, and the players would reiterate, mostly our fault. Like, we gave up the games. We made dumb plays and dumb times over the fourth quarter. They've grown up. They've eliminated that. But now you're playing a team, Rod, who's won 20 consecutive ball games. So you've got to find that clutch level. You probably have the better talent, but you've got to find a way through game plan. And that's why this is an important game for Sark, to the way CJ started that point, the Sark versus Kalen DeBoard conversation. This has to be a really good game for Sark. I mean, he's really got to, navigate this game with the, time clock situations, end of half, start of second half, those kind of trying to steal some possessions and use that overall talent advantage through game planning and scheme on both sides of the ball to win this football game. They're getting fired up here.
They're fired up.
Well, they're fired up because I think LSU just clinched it with Wisconsin. Something's happening in the Wisconsin with LSU game.
It looks like LSU just won the game. A little strip sack on 4th and 25. We got to remember we're still in Cajun country down here, so it's flooded with burnt orange, and it's great. There's still some Go Tigers that we're seeing around. Don't let all that purple that we're seeing from Washington fool you. There's a lot of
That's a good point, though. Yeah, that's a good point. I ain't think about that.
Rod, to the musts for this game, for the Longhorns on defense, the secondary is the weakest part of the defense, and that obviously plays right into Michael Penix and the top passing offense in the country. Who must really step up and have big games today for Texas if they're going to slow this offense down? Who are the guys that you're targeting that have to play, over their skis a little bit and really play a really high-level football game today in that secondary and on that defense?
Oh, man. Yeah. I got a lot of guys I can name. In the secondary, you need your young corners to hold up. There are going to be times when they run 3-by-1 sets, one single receiver to one side, trips to the other, where they're going to be able to isolate your young cornerbacks on Romo Dunze or Jalen Polk or Jalen McMillan. There are going to be times where, they're going to be able to get you deep downfield in a one-on-one. Even PK said that. He said, my guys going to win. It's just football. They're going to be one-on-one with that guy downfield, and Penix will take his shots, as we all know, on 50-50 balls with his guys, trusting his receivers are going to be able to win that. So the corners and the safeties, they probably, in my opinion, I think they're number one. I think they got to have a hell of a game. They got to have one of their best games of the season. Fortunately enough for them, I think they played some of their best pass defensive games in the Oklahoma State game, in the Texas Tech game. So they're trending the right way. And you had an entire, month essentially to prepare for Washington. And last year they did a really good job in terms of the pass defense. They just struggled in the run defense, and they struggled on money downs last season. And then the pressure. You got to get to Michael Penix somehow. Last year you only had 8 quarterback hurries. You got to get to him. And I know you're not always going to sack him, but sometimes, guys, the pressure will still – It will make the quarterback erratic enough. It will force him out of his comfort zone enough where you will at least be able to win, that game of inches, where you can get your hand on a football, a PBU, ball is off, maybe the ball placement's a little off. It's going to be that kind of game because the sack rate is a little bit. I think it's a little deceiving. The sack rate for Washington, why it's so low. It's so low because of him. It's him. If you go look at the blitz, rate and how many blitzes actually convert to sacks, he's at 3%. If you go look at the pressures converted into sacks against Penix, he's at 9%. Those are elite numbers. Quinn Ewers is, I believe, double that, right? Double those numbers. Man, when this guy has pressure on him, or when he sees the blitz, he gets rid of the football really quickly. And half the time that's effective, half the time it isn't. But his completion percentage drops precipitously when he faces the blitz, and it drops when he's outside the pocket to 56% into like 46%. I think that's the way you go. You want him outside the pocket, and you also want him throwing the football under duress as much as possible. If Texas do that, they got a shot.
Yeah, and on the outside, Ryan Watts, Manny Muhammad, Terrence Brooks, who I thought played a good game in this game a year ago down in San Antonio. He really stepped up as a true freshman. And obviously Michael Taft. And remember, there's no Derek Williams in the first half of this game. He's suspended.
Nope.
So they're going to have to go with the Keaton Crawford, Jaron Thompson. Who else can we go with back there? And you got to know, at least in the first half, that Washington's going to try to target that and see if they can create some matchups that they see as favorable. But they have to hold up in that back end. And to Rod's point, this is a guy in Michael Penix that's in 1,600 career attempts has only been sacked 31 times. To Rod's point, he gets rid of the football. Yep. He's smart with the ball. He doesn't take negative plays, and that's part of why they've won 20 straight football games. The quarterback makes more positive plays than he ever makes negative plays.
Yep. And real quick, I think it's something that we haven't really touched on so far in our preparation, but it's the average distance of target is worth considering, especially early on. There's not going to be a Derek Williams on the field, who, Rod, I think we both agree is the best cover safety for Texas. I was looking at it just now. Rome Odunze is averaging 15.5 yards per target down the field. So that's not necessarily, a catch and run.
Yeah.
It's not a yards after catch. His average distance of target, where he is at the point of catching a football, is at 15.5 yards down the field. Yeah. Jalen Polk, 14.5. So these guys are getting down the field and getting targeted right in that range. And then I wanted to talk about this because this is not something that is a part of the Texas offense, or not a part of the Washington offense, excuse me. They don't throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage as often as Texas. You can see it here. Texas is right around almost 30% of passes right behind the line of scrimmage. That is huge. It is far and away the most of any team in the playoff right now. You can see just over 11% of their passes go down the field greater than 20 yards. So this is not, as much as we talked about the fun, explosive plays of Steve Sarkisian, we haven't necessarily seen that as we have with other teams in the playoff right now, especially Alabama. That's their whole game plan, basically, is to air it out deep. But that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Xavier Worthy's average distance to target is only 9 yards down the field because he's so involved in those quick screens, those jet motion pop passes as well. That's kind of been, a different way that they can hurt you, whereas Washington doesn't necessarily provide that as a total threat in their game plan. So early on, I expect Washington to be active throwing the ball down the field because there's no Derek Williams, and we certainly see it all season long. That's one of their favorite things to do by getting Rome, Polk, and McMillan involved down the field early, often, and it's worked out. It certainly has.
Good stuff.
Yeah, Rod, you've talked about that in the rewatch of the Washington games, and they're going to push the ball down the field. There's no doubt about that. That's what makes that sack number for Michael Penix in his career and over the last 2 years really incredible. They do stretch the field. They don't throw little quick passes and protect the quarterback. He protects himself. The offensive line does a good job. They move the pocket when they need to. He's got an ability to move in that pocket. Because those are long developing plays that get these guys down the field. How does that play in, Rod? If you're a defensive back, you know it's coming. What's your month of preparation been like, knowing that you're going to get tested with a lot of downfield passes and a lot of 50-50 opportunities where you've just got to go make a play?
Yeah, I know these guys have been working on their fundamentals, obviously defending and covering the deep passes downfield. I'm sure that the coaches have emphasized the safety help, that if you do have a single, middle field safety, a center fielder, that guy getting enough depth so he can break on those deep routes, give those guys some inside help. If they do go too deep, which they oftentimes did last season, they go too deep safeties, roll that safety late to help in the run game. But that helped them actually neutralize and it helped them defend those deeper shots downfield. They always had an extra defender down there. Very rarely did you see a DB defending a deep shot one-on-one by themselves. They usually had some help to one side, the other over the top, or they have some help coming from the inside. So that's going to be key. And leverage is so important in this game. And PK mentioned it briefly in the media availability they had for the Sugar Bowl. He talked about how they adjusted to leverage. Anybody who's heard me all season long, heard me early in the season, complaining and criticizing the leverage, how the leverage didn't make sense for Texas. At times they'd be outside leverage, and yet they'd be a blitz. They'd be playing man coverage with outside leverage without inside help. It's like, that doesn't make sense. If you don't have inside help, you got to get inside or you got to be head up. So some of the leverage where they were didn't make sense. Now the leverage makes a lot more sense, and also they're more aggressive with that leverage. They're playing more press coverage in the last 2 games, and when you play press coverage, most of the time you're going to be inside leverage. That's important. Last season, man, Washington killed Texas with inside breaking routes. I remember rewatching that game and going back and looking at their percentage basically of conversions on inside breaking routes. 69% completion percentage for Washington last season on in breaking routes, 50% conversion rate on money downs on inside breaking routes. And that is something that's persisted this season for Texas, right? They're allowing now damn near 9 yards per attempt on inside breaking routes so far this year. And that was a problem for Texas last season, right? They couldn't defend inside breaking routes, especially when it came to money downs. If you go look at money downs so far this year, Texas defending money downs on targets to inside breaking routes, they're allowing a 53% conversion rate. That's pretty high. So leverage is going to be key in this game. You do not want, if you're going to put pressure on Michael Penix, especially if you're going to pressure on the interior, which we know is going to come naturally from Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, you don't want him to have an easy out for a guy running an inside breaking route. You'd want him to make the tougher throw, which is outside the numbers, outside the hash, where he's got to abandon the pocket to do it, preferably to his right since he's left-handed.
Rod, people on the comment line are loving your icy white uniforms. They're asking for you to put the helmet on, though. They want you to put the helmet
man. Hey, I had the solidarity. They're going to be on icy whites today, right? So I wanted to make sure icy whites, baby. Stormtroopers.
Before you head out to go do the Horn pregame show with me on hornfm.com and on the Horn in Austin, you need to put that helmet on at least one time. Game week.
I'll grab it. I'll put it on one time. It's in the background.
Right, right with us. Rod's going to put it on before he peels off. He's just going to peel off. Bobby Burton will join us. We're live at Manning's right here in beautiful downtown New Orleans. Only a couple of blocks from the casino. Did you make any trips over to the casinos?
I've not. I don't know. That's one of my most favorite things in the world to do is sit back, have a couple cocktails, and start, wagering on some blackjack. But not this time. If there's a victory tonight, you know where to find me.
Might be over there. Hey,
nice.
A good shout out yesterday. I ran into and actually rang in the new year with DBU, Lance Gunn. Lance Gunn was hanging out last night. Wow. Lance, one of the nicer people you ever meet, living out in Burnett now. A super guy. He said to say hi. It's good to see Lance. A lot of Longhorns out here. I saw DeMarvion Overshone over at the hotel. By the way, DeMarvion is, of course, he got hurt with the Cowboys in training camp, but he's not limping. Looks good. Looks like he's been working out, too, working on that upper body. Demo says he'll be good to go for the upcoming season for the Dallas Cowboys.
Nice.
He got a win last Saturday night. So good to see him. There's a lot of folks, and this town is ready for this game. I think that's safe to say. They're fired up. And I heard somebody say it today. It might have been Rod Gilmore on one of the games I was watching, the early games here, the bowl games on New Year's Day. And Happy New Year to everybody, by the way. Rod, that this is the best matchup of semifinal games that we've ever had in the 10 years of the 14 play. Is there any doubt about that this is the best? You agree with that, right?
Absolutely. Wow. And I mentioned it earlier. I think it's up to 70% of semifinal games have been double-digit blowout victories. There's not been a close matchup, and I think we're going to get two good ones. I don't think either game will be a double-digit margin of victory. As much as, I'd like kind of a carefree win for Texas tonight, obviously, but that's not going to be the case. The strength on strength for both teams tonight match up well enough to keep everybody in the game. Seemingly until the final whistle. Rod, you said you think it comes down to a final kick, last possession kind of game. I'm looking at Michigan, Alabama as two completely different styles, but neither team has faced a whole lot of that type of style throughout the year. As a result of that, I think there's going to be a lot of points in that game. I think it's going to be a fun game, a nice little appetizer for all the Longhorn fans ready for 7:45 to come rolling around. But I think two close games are in store for tonight. A nice, finish to bowl season, which has otherwise been, I would say, pretty disappointing in terms of the opt-outs, the transfers. We're looking at 28-0. Oregon just beat the brakes off of Liberty. I don't know, not a great bowl season, but two good games tonight. I'm predicting. I'm calling.
No, I think you're right.
I like that. I'll say this. I think they're saying that because the storylines are so good. Think about it. Is Texas back? Finally, Texas first time in the college football playoff. That's been a storyline every damn season, right? And that comes with the redemption story of Steve Sarkisian, which is also a really good subplot. Kalen DeBoer in Washington. I mean, you talked about that's the longest winning streak in college football right now. They are the Cinderella story of this damn thing. They're the ones who probably aren't supposed to be here. They're the one of these things that's not like the other guys, and it's Washington's, right? Like, how did Washington get here, considering the talent advantages it's amazing what they've done. So that's a great storyline they're going to. And then you got Michigan. I mean, Michigan's been in the news all year long because Harbaugh, the old ball coach, has been suspended twice already for different violations, and they still got the sign stealing scandal kind of hanging over them. So they believe they got an axe to grind, all right, because they think everything's, the NCAA is working against them. So they got their own storyline and they got their own kind of motivation for this thing. And then there's Nick Saban, the GOAT, who everybody thought was done earlier in the season after Texas beat him. And then it turns out, no, Nick Saban, he's not done. He's still the GOAT. All right. He just had one loss on his resume, so he ain't perfect. So that's a great storyline too. I mean, so I think the storyline, I don't know if you've had this many really good storylines in the college football playoff. I think that's what I'm getting at.
Rod, I think a fun, interesting storyline that we haven't talked a whole lot about is the Muhammad's. Malik, obviously, true freshman. Jabbar transferred over from Oklahoma State and is now over at Washington, the starting cornerback over there. They're technically cousins, but if you talk to either one of them, they'll claim brothers. They're close, both from DeSoto, the South Dallas area, but pretty cool for the two of them to be playing off, against one another tonight. Obviously, two very talented cornerbacks, and you can tell, DBs, that runs in the blood pretty well.
Dude, that's a really cool story. I when I read that, my mind was blown. And Jabbar Muhammad is their best cover corner. Got 3 picks. He's got 12 PBUs. He's got a fumble recovery. He's their best playmaker in the secondary, and he's a little different because he's shorter than the rest of their guys. They're long. That's one thing you'll be really impressed with about the secondary of Washington. Not only are they opportunistic, they'll take some chances on the football. They're long, rangy, good-looking athletes. I mean, Michelle Powell is 6'1", 210. Hampton is 6'3", 220. Was it Thaddeus Drew is 6'1", 192. Elisha Johnson 6'1", 190. There's a certain type of athlete they're recruiting, and they're long and rangy. I like that about the secondary. He helps make a lot of plays on the ball. But Jabbar Muhammad, he's not the long and rangy type, but he's definitely a guy that's got great football instincts. You can tell he's got great genes. That's just part of the family. But that's the guy who they say they would try to match up on Xavier Worthy as much as they can. They like him matched up on X-Man as much as possible. I don't know if Sark will allow that because Sark has so much position fluidity with his wide receivers. I mean, unless he's going to shadow X-Man and give away what coverage they're in, that's almost impossible to do at the college level.
Yeah, you talked about the certain style in which Washington likes to recruit defensive backs. We've talked about it, leading up to the Anthony Williams commitment at linebacker. Washington's always done this. You look at Kevin King, a first-round draftee of the Philadelphia Eagles, 6'3", something that even throughout some coaching changes, that's been a mainstay for them. Length. That whole state, really. You look at what Richard Sherman and the Legion of Boom was doing as well back in the day. That's what it is. So certainly a type that they like.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, we had a little computer malfunction over here. We're getting Aaron back on the screen here in a second, so he'll jump back in whenever everything's set and ready to go. But real quick, Rod, I wanted to touch about Jalen McMillan and Jahdae Barron, because that was a little bit of a one-on-one, if you will, that I think is flying under the radar.
Yeah. And
Jalen McMillan, a guy who I kind of liken as that underneath guy to really lead up to the deep balls to Rome and Jalen Polk. For when you cover a guy like Jalen McMillan, who's kind of the more shifty underneath guy, how tricky is it to not bite all the time on those slants, those outs? Because it takes just one sluggo and all of a sudden it's 6 points and a fight song's being played.
Yep, it's all about eye discipline. And I heard the guys mention this. I forgot which member of the DBs. It might have been Terrence Brooks who talked about it. The eye discipline is going to be key going up against Washington, and he's right about that. And getting back to Jahdae Barron specifically, that's what got him in trouble a little bit in the Oklahoma State game, right? He didn't have enough patience in his eye discipline. When he saw the initial out by a player, he jumped it, but he jumped it with the wrong leverage, right? If you're going to jump that route, you got to jump the upfield shoulder so that when he comes up, he's going to run dead smack into you. but he didn't do that. He undercut it because he's Janae Barron. He's trying to make the play, and that got him a little bit in trouble. So I just think it's a little bit of patience, and it's making sure you're fundamentally sound while reading your keys. There's a way for you to be aggressive and play it, but play it with better, I said fundamentals and better technique. And I think you can see that with some of the players. What I worry about is, because you talked about how the quick underneath routes, right? The quick game, which is what Washington beat Texas with last season. I worry about that when Washington, which they love to do, they go to bunch formations, when they go to stack twins, tight twins, when they go condensed and compressed sets, anytime they have a closely clustered group of receivers. This has been a problem for Texas, and it was last season. They didn't throw the football with success last season, vertically, intermediate game, or deep game. It was a short game, and the way they got open, a lot of it was bunch formations and closely clustered groups of receivers. Last season, when I went back and watched it, although they didn't have a high completion percentage, look at third down and fourth down conversions in when you were targeting closely clustered groups of receivers, bunch formations. They were at 85% conversion rate in that game last year. That was the game. I mean, that was the game in a nutshell. And you go look at this season, Texas defending targets to bunch formation, allowing nearly an 80% completion percentage, allowing nearly 11.5 yards per attempt. And if you look at targets to bunch formation on money downs, specifically on money downs, Texas allowing teams to convert at close to a 70% clip. On money downs, targets to bunch formations. Washington will do this early and often. The key to it is patience. You want to sit on those routes. Now, if you sit on some of these routes, especially on money downs, sit wherever the sticks are, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 3, wherever it is. There's a high likelihood they're going to throw to get the first down. There's also a chance they could take you up top. That's why you got to play it with good fundamentals. Play it with good leverage. If you're going to sit, make sure that you're reading the hips. Make sure you're reading the body language of the receiver correctly, so you'll know that if he's trying to take you up top, or if he's giving you a hitch and go, or if it's an out and up, play it through the right shoulder. These things are going to be key if you want to be able to be aggressive and jump those underneath routes, or they will make you pay for shoddy technique.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. And when you talk about the Texas defensive backs, it's hard not to talk about Ryan Watts, obviously banged up a little bit towards the end of the year. He's good to go. Texas is looking very healthy right now. I know that there were some question marks in regards to Xavier Worthy. I've been told he is healthy. That month off with the ankle after the Oklahoma State, I've been told he is healthy. So the little rumors and stuff like that, he'll tape it up. He'll be good to go. I would be shocked if this is a game where Xavier Worthy is not, on the field ready to go. So it's a testament to, one, just the competitiveness that he brings and the toughness that also comes with being, a guy who's probably a little undersized compared to most. So, but man, I'm excited. Rod, this is, what are we, about 4.5 hours away? I know people are filling into the Michigan-Alabama Rose Bowl right now.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get a couple score predictions here in the chat? I want to see just where everybody's head's at, because we've talked about it. We both think, this is going to be a game in the 30s, kind of back and forth. Are you still leaning a last-minute kind of last possession field goal type of game?
I just feel that way, man. I'm looking at the one loss Texas came down to a game winning drive for Oklahoma. Potentially could have been a game saving defensive drive for Texas. We've seen Texas in that situation defensively multiple times this season against U of H, saw it against K-State, and they were successful pulling that out. Even the game stealing play with A.D. Mitchell in the TCU game. There have been so many times this year where the game has kind of come down to being able to win the game in clutch time down the stretch for Texas. I just think all of Washington's games seem like they come down to the wire like that. I feel like every time I watch a Washington game, it feels like it's coming down to the wire potentially. Penix is really good in that situation. He's got 5 game-winning drives in his career. He's really good there. But Texas has been so clutch and in so many ways, right? As part of the defensive stands, defensive game-winning saving plays, A.D. Mitchell with that game-sealing catch versus TCU, them being able to choke the life out of Alabama late in that game in the fourth quarter with the run game. Iowa State, the way they run that game late. I mean, I've seen them win games late in the clutch in many ways. So I know they'll find a way to do it. I just can't tell you how exactly it's going to look. But I'm pretty sure for Washington, it's going to come down to Washington's offense. And they're going to try to get their offense the ball late to try to win it for them. And they're comfortable there. That's the way they play. Texas may be Texas won't be uncomfortable in that situation, but I can't say I give Texas the advantage in clutch time down the stretch because Washington's done way more than Texas. And, of course, they're undefeated, so they haven't lost in that situation.
I was going to ask you if you think being in that kind of situation where you need a stop or a score late so often, how – from a player side of things, is it one of those things where you're like, oh my God, we have to do this again? Or is it kind of this is the moment I want to live for. This is the play I want to be in this position late in the game to be the hero, make that game-winning play. What is that like from that mindset of, we're not necessarily blowing these teams out, but when it gets down to it, we know we're going to make the play to come away with the victory.
Honestly, I feel like that's Washington's blueprint, don't you? You brought up their first half scoring, right? How good they are in the first quarter, and they're the best team scoring-wise in the second quarter. But that falls off a little bit in the third and the fourth quarter. But I just brought up the game-winning drives. I brought up how they win in clutch time. So their recipe is pretty simple. We get a lead, and then we find a way to win late after we get our lead. If we need to find a way to win, we'll find a way to win. And honestly, Texas, I always say Texas blueprint is they want to open up with the passing game, big plays, hopefully get a lead, allow their big humans to lean on you, and then close and choke you out with the run game late, i.e. Alabama or Iowa State. And so both of these teams, I think the first half is just going to be so key. I think the first half is going to be big in determining kind of this heavyweight fight. What the game plans were, like what each team was trying to exploit versus the other, and then you'll get a gauge, you'll get a feel for who's going to be the team that can win it late. Because the team that's making the most clutch plays in critical moments, I'm talking about third and fourth downs, all right, money downs, those are clutch critical moments, red zone, clutch critical moments. You'll see that all throughout the game. You'll go, damn, man, it's Washington's making a lot of plays on critical moments. Oh, man, Texas, every time the game's on the line, pretty much third and fourth down in the red zone, they're making clutch plays. Then you'll know. Because I still think it'll come down to the wire into the game-winning drive, but I think you'll know what team was ready mentally for those situations based on how the first half goes.
It's good to have been in a position like this, like we're talking about, coming late down into the games. Winning kind of the line of scrimmage late in the game is very important, and I had to think the Texas defensive line is going to be at least a little bit better positioned to make that play if need be. I look back at the Kansas State goal line stops, the multiple stops to win that game late in Austin. When you kind of consider the plays that got Texas here, I think we've mentioned this in the past. Is there one that you kind of think, that's the reason why Texas is where they are? Is there a play leading up to this game where you sit back and think, if it wasn't for that one, Texas would have another loss by their loss column?
Oh, man, there are a bunch of those, man. They really are. I mean, obviously the Jay Witt play versus the TCU, that comes to mind, right? Top of mind. Honestly, people forget the Jay Brooks fumble recovery in the Bama game on that. Did they try to tush push? I'm not sure what the hell that was.
Yeah.
That was big, man. That was huge.
I have not heard that play since it happened. And right. You remember Quinn Ewers' reaction?
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you. that play will do. That play to me stands out still to this day as a big play.
That's a great pull,
right? Honestly, I hated to throw it out there because I know also that was a favorable call by the officials in the spot the U of H game. Yeah. But Ja'Day Barron made a hell of a. Ja'Day Barron wasn't even playing. He wasn't even playing. They pulled this guy off the bench. He was kicking it, hanging out. He thought he was just going to go to the game and support his team emotionally. He's on the sideline. And imagine going to coach. Coach, I think I need to play. I don't know if y'all going to win if I don't play. Guy went out there and made the game-saving play for Texas in clutch time.
You know what's interesting about that play? Texas has been so good on those natural rub routes where, the number 2 receiver just runs the line immediately and it's a slant from the 1.
Yeah.
If you look back at the Kansas State game, there was a play where Kansas State wanted to go straight into that same kind of scheme. Yeah. They wanted to get the ball out late, but because of the communication, I think it was Jade or it might have been David Binda feeding into Terrence Brooks or whoever it was. There was just great communication that they knew immediately that we're going to banjo if they switch.
Yep.
And we're going to stay home. And that eventually turned into I think it was a throwaway or a batted ball at the line of scrimmage. That right there tells you, or at least tells me, Texas is communicating very well at a very high level in the back end of the secondary. And that's, you got to have that in a game like this. So I love that. I also point to the Savondre Sweat batted ball. Fullback sneak into the end zone. That's my play of the year. I've mentioned it several times, but man, what a year it's been. What a year it's been. I'm excited for tonight to be down here in New Orleans, down in the Sugar Bowl. It's going to be a blast.
Dude, it's good. I wish I was there. I can imagine. I'm trying to think recently when there's been a Longhorn fellowship event of this magnitude. The other sports have been playing great. You've seen volleyball win back-to-back national titles, and they're amazing. We've seen, Texas, obviously swimming, diving, amazing. They always have the championship run. So I'm not disrespecting any of the other sports on the 40 acres, but football is the biggest of those sports. All right. Texas is considered football blue blood. It's been a long time since Texas has been this good and is competing for a championship in football. And now you're doing it closer to home. I'm trying. When's the last time you think you had a Longhorn event with this number, this number of Longhorns fellowshipping in one place? And if you make it to the national title, I can tell you right now, that would be unprecedented. There would never, ever in the history of Longhorn sports have been an event where there are going to be as many Longhorns hanging out in H-Town for the national title game as there will be if Texas beats Washington. They're going to set all type of Longhorn attendance records for all kind of stuff because Texas Longhorns community going to take over that town and celebrate their football team.
And we'll get a chance to see whether or not Texas will get that chance to fight for a national title down in Houston tonight. We're just over 4.5 hours away from kickoff. To everybody that's watching tonight, thank you. This has been a blast. It's been a long day of football. Lots of discussion. I'm looking forward to the game tonight. Woo. So, for Rod Babers, I'm CJ Vogel. This is On Texas Football. Let's go Horns and hook 'em.
Okay.
Good job.